Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Sometime within the last few months, I put together a spreadsheet that's a timeline where I'm trying to collect every modern day prophecy, meaning any prophecy in modern times that are not from the scriptures. So, not from Doctrine and Covenants or before. And interestingly, Elder Rasband in this last general conference gave a talk called Right Before Our Eyes, and he mentioned one of these prophecies. So I want to read that prophecy, but before I do, I want to read a little bit from his talk. I noticed something interesting here. He starts off by saying, President Russell M. Nelson said at our last conference, "Do you see what is happening right before our eyes? I pray that we will not miss the majesty of this moment. The Lord is indeed hastening his work." And then at the very end of the talk, he repeats that again. He says, "I emphasize again the words of our living prophet. Do you see what is happening right before our eyes? I pray that we will not miss the majesty of this moment. The Lord is hastening his work. May we as disciples of our day shout, Hurrah for Israel, as we prepare for the return of our Lord and Savior." Okay, so I feel like that gives the proper context of this prophecy that we're about to read. This is a prophecy of Elder Melvin J. Ballard. He was in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and there is one of these books that, you have all these books for general authorities and like these biographies, sometimes autobiographies or compilations of sermons that they've given. So this one is for Melvin J. Ballard. It's called Crusader for Righteousness. And we're going to start here in chapter 6, South American Mission. On November 8th, 1851, Elder Parley P. Pratt and his wife with Elder Rufus C. Allen disembarked from the ship Henry Kelsey at Valparaiso, Chile. These were the first Latter-day Saint missionaries called to South America, having been sent to open the door for the preaching of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ in that land. I want to point out, it was only a couple years ago that President Nelson announced a temple in Valparaiso. The city is called Viña del Mar, and it's in the region called Valparaiso. So that temple now has more meaning to me now that I know that that's where the preaching of the gospel in South America began. And there was also a devastating fire in that area. Remember, Viña del Mar means vineyard of the sea, and Valparaiso means like valley of paradise. And we noted the similarity between that fire and the Paradise, California fire and the Los Angeles fires. And I feel like something's going on. But anyway, there's been a temple announced for this location. All right, continuing. The missionaries lived for several months in Valparaiso, and for about 1 month, 40 miles inland. Unfortunately, revolution, civil war, and the language difficulties prevented them from accomplishing much, and they returned to the United States in May 1852. For 70 years, you guys, 7 and 70 and things like that have been showing up so much recently on this channel. For 70 years, no further missionary attempts were made in that land. Really quick, let's just do a quick little tangent talking about 70 years of like nothing happening. Let's go to my spreadsheet called Timeline Missouri. I recently found out that after the Saints were expelled from Jackson County in 1833, it was exactly 70 years later that the church purchased land in Jackson County again. And it's the land that the visitor center and the stake center sit on. It's part of the temple land for the 24 temple complex. You can see right here. Sorry, I may have misspoke. It was 70 years later that they authorized the purchase of the land. And then it was the next year that the purchase actually happened. Okay. So 70 years from the expulsion until the church purchasing that really critical land. And then I did this recent video. It was like a video tour of the Richmond Pioneer Cemetery and also the Richmond Cemetery, which is a separate cemetery. You have some of the some of the witnesses to the gold plates that have been buried in these two cemeteries. And I didn't point this out in that video, but take a look at this. So Richmond is just, it's like 40 minutes east of Independence. And we went there, I think it was like last week, me and my wife. I'll put a link for this video in the description box below. You may want to watch it. A lot of people skipped out on this one, but it's really interesting. Okay, Richmond Pioneer Cemetery. In this cemetery are the graves of a number of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormon, who were prominent in this section in the early days of Missouri. They included Oliver Cowdery, for a time a close friend and associate of Joseph Smith, founder through revelation of that church. The large granite monument was dedicated November 22nd, 1911. There's some of those double numbers that we see a lot, 22 in this case, and then 1911. More than 200 people from Salt Lake City headquarters of the church were present. Were present. By agreement, now this is the part that I want to highlight. By agreement with the city of Richmond, after the cemetery had been abandoned for about 70 years, the church landscaped the area in 1949 to 1950. Brush and rubbish were removed. Headstones were restored where possible. New shrubbery, hardwood, and evergreen trees were planted, and the entire area sown to grass. So another 70. So we have two 70-year periods in Missouri. And going back to this, 70 years from the time of the first missionaries until the next set of missionaries, which, from what I gather from this, I think that missionary work continued from this second time all the way until present. But a 70-year gap. So interesting. Oh, another 70-year gap was we had two apostles with the first name of David at the beginning of this dispensation. And then after they were either excommunicated or died, it was 70 years. 70 years passed until we had the next apostle named David. And that David was David O. McKay, who later became president of the church. So anyway, just really interesting stuff. Okay, so in 1923, Andrew Jensen, assistant church historian, visited several South American countries in the interest of church history, and on his return reported to the general authorities his deep impression that South America was ready for a gospel harvest. His counsel was reinforced by correspondence received the following year from Wilhelm Friedrichs and Emil Hoppe, or Hoppe, or I don't know, converts from Germany, then residing in Buenos Aires, who urged that missionaries be sent, and reported that some Germans were awaiting baptism. The sequel to these developments is indicated in a brief entry in Elder Ballard's diary. September 3rd, 1925. Meeting, 10 a.m. President Grant announced that the First Presidency had under consideration for a year and a half the question of opening a mission in South America, and had concluded that the time had come to do this, in that one of the 12 should do it, in that Melvin J. Ballard had been chosen, and that he should take with him Rulon S. Wells, who spoke German, and Ray L. Pratt, who spoke Spanish. It was approved by the council. This was the second great shock of my life. At the October General Conference, 1925, Rulon S. Wells and Ray L. Pratt of the First Council of the 70 and Elder Melvin J. Ballard were called to go to South America and dedicate the land for the preaching of the gospel, to open a mission there, and to lay the foundation for establishing the church in that vast continent. Okay, so this is the backstory. This is the context of the prophecy that we're going to read. We're going to go ahead and skip forward to page 84. The prenatal promise and patriarchal blessing received further fulfillment in this mission, quote unquote, in the midst of Zion, of which South America is a part. He proved to be a quote unquote mighty prophet, Again, not only in proclaiming his great witness to the divine sonship of Jesus Christ, but also in demanding predictive role. For at a testimony meeting held in Buenos Aires on July 4th, 1926, Elder Ballard made this prophecy, which Vernon Sharp recorded in his diary. Okay, so here is the prophecy that Elder Rasband just referenced in his General Conference talk. The work of the Lord will grow slowly for a time here, just as an oak grows slowly from an acorn. It will not shoot up in a day, as does the sunflower that grows quickly and then dies, but thousands will join the church here. It will be divided into more than one mission and will be one of the strongest in the church. The work here is the smallest that it will ever be. The day will come when the Lamanites in this land will be given a chance. The South American mission will be a power in the church. Let's go back to Elder Rasband's talk and see what he said about this prophecy. He said, "Last year, I was privileged to preside at the dedication of the Mendoza, Argentina temple. In my message, I referred to Elder Melvin J. Ballard's 1926 prophecy that the work of the Lord would grow slowly for a time in South America. Quote, just as an oak grows slowly from an acorn, it will not shoot up in a day, end quote. But thousands would join the church, and the nations of South America would become, quote unquote, a power in the church." And then Elder Rasband says, "I saw that prophecy fulfilled right before my eyes." So that is so cool. Let's go back to the book, Melvin J. Ballard, Crusader for Righteousness, because look what it says. I was on the wrong tab. Look what it says here. How has this prophecy been fulfilled to date? Now, this book was published in 1966. Okay. The answer no doubt thrills Elder Ballard, where he now labors for the Lord's cause, for Elder Ballard's missionary group of 3 has grown to nearly 1,500. The one mission has had to be divided into 7, and the 16 people, presumably 3 of them missionaries, in that first meeting in 1925, have swelled to an army of 70,000. And the end is not yet. Yeah, that's an understatement. So that was 1966. Okay, 7 missions. Let's go ahead and look at the Wikipedia article for all the missions in the church. And if this is accurate, and I think that it is, because at the top it said that it had referenced something in 2024. So as of right now, it would seem that there are 67 missions. If we go to this article for church membership worldwide, so the countries that are in blue have the highest number of members in the church, over 1 million. So of course you have Brazil, which is in South America, the United States, and Mexico. And then purple is the next largest. And you can see Peru and Chile. And then you can see the key right here in the map. The top countries, at least some of the top countries in the church, are South American countries. So I have this sorted by number of members. So you got Brazil, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia. These are all in like the top 10 to 15. So yeah, I would say that South America is definitely a powerhouse in the church. You can go to the meeting house locator. Let me zoom out and we'll look at the rest of the world. You see all the red dots all over the place. You can tell that there are a ton in South America, but you have to scroll in to some of these larger cities, and it doesn't show all the dots when you're scrolled out. When you scroll in, more and more and more dots appear. So there are just a ton in South America. Same thing with temples. Let me zoom out. So this is on the church's website that has a map for temples. And the two continents that have the most temples are North America and South America. Africa is doing a good job at catching up, at least catching up to Europe. But you have that, Asia, Australia. Okay, so I thought that's really good. So I've gone ahead and I've added it to my spreadsheet for modern day prophecies. I want to come back to that in just a second. There was the one part that we read where it talked about South America also being Zion. So I have 3 quotes that I want to share to show where that concept comes from. Okay. So this is a quote from Joseph Smith. You can find this on the Joseph Smith Papers website. Discourse as reported by Martha Jane Knowlton Curray. And it says, afterwards read the parable of the 12 olive trees and said, speaking of the land of Zion, that it consisted of all North and South America, but that any place where the saints gather is Zion. And then later on, it's repeated again. The redemption of Zion is the redemption of all North and South America. Okay. So we have that from Joseph Smith. We have this from President Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses, Volume 6, page 296, column A. Suppose we are ready for it, and a great temple is built at the central point in Jackson County. Gentlemen, don't be startled, for if we don't go back there, our sons and daughters will, and a great temple will be built upon the consecrated spot, and a great many more besides that. The land of Joseph is the land of Zion, and it takes North and South America to make the land of Zion, the land of Joseph. And then I have one more quote that's more recent. By the way, this is on my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z. What's currently row 385 for New Jerusalem definition, because there's several definitions of New Jerusalem. It is going to be an actual city, the way that we think of cities, but it also encompasses all of North and South America. But then beyond that, it refers to the church. I have this quote from President Joseph Fielding Smith. He says, there is no difference in the meaning whether references to the church or the New Jerusalem. So it can kind of get confusing, and sometimes people, I think, misunderstand prophecy because they only think of the actual city, or they do the reverse and just think of just the church. So it gets confusing, but there are these 3 definitions that I'm aware of. So the actual city in Independence, Missouri, or what is now Independence, Missouri, then you have all North and South America, and then beyond that, you do have the entire church. Okay. Let's go to this last one. This is from President Spencer W. Kimball. This is the April 1975 General Conference. The name of the talk is, Why Call Me Lord, Lord, and Do Not the Things Which I Say? With some of the brethren, we have just returned recently from the area conferences in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and in Buenos Aires, Argentina. In that southern world of Zion, we reminded them that Zion was all of North and South America, like the wide, spreading wings of a great eagle, the one being North and the other South America. I'll just cut it off there because the rest of it starts talking about something else. Okay, so I think that's pretty interesting. I've also created a new row for South America on quotes A through Z. So just for your reference, if you want to access my spreadsheets, the link is in the description box of each video. I'm always getting questions if you can have access to my spreadsheet, and the answer is yes. The link is in the description box. And they're best viewed on a desktop or a laptop. Okay, and finally, I just want to show you, I put it on this prophecy that we just covered. I put it on my spreadsheet called Quotes, Prophecy Modern Day. So we have this new prophecy, new to the spreadsheet, about South America being a power in the church. That's 1926. And let me just do a quick overview or review of the other prophecies that I have on here. 1849, we have Brigham Young's prophecy, what I call the Olympics prophecy, about kings, emperors, noble, wise, that will come to Salt Lake City. President Gordon B. Hinckley said that that was fulfilled with the 2002 Winter Olympics. And I guess there's going to be probably an even greater fulfillment of that with the 2034 Winter Olympics. 1884, a prophecy of Elder Erastus Snow that there would be hundreds of temples in this land, referring to America. And then Abraham O. Smoot saying, like, basically repeating hundreds of temples in this land. That was at the dedication of the Manti, Utah temple. And then we have President Wilford Woodruff's prophecy of World War I. And we have a couple different accounts of that. But it first came to us in the year that the Salt Lake Temple was dedicated. But prophecy about World War I. Now we have this one about South America, 1926. 1979, we have President Spencer W. Kimball's prophecy about the women of today. According to President Nelson, it's the women of right now. That the women of right now will bring in a large number of people into the church. It says here, much of the major growth that is coming to the church in the last days will come because many of the good women of the world, in whom there is often such an inner sense of spirituality, will be drawn to the church in large numbers by the women of our church. And then the most recent one that I have is from this year, and it's by President Nelson. And he said that this new BYU School of Medicine will go far beyond anything we can see right now. So that's all that I have for right now. If you know of any other modern day prophecies that are not recorded in the scriptures, please feel free to send them my way so that I can add them to the spreadsheet, and we'll see how many we can collect. Okay, for right now, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.